Welcome to Sin Dieta. This is a space where we talk openly about eating disorders, disordered eating, and the systems that shape how we see food, our bodies, and ourselves. We're four Latina professionals working in eating disorder care. We have two therapists, a registered dietitian, and a pediatric nurse practitioner coming together to bring conversations that blend our clinical experience, our cultural perspectives, and our commitment to community healing. We're colleagues from different disciplines coming together to explore our passions of being able to heal together.
All right. Well, I will quickly jump into the not so fun kind of wordy thing, but just wanting to set a little disclaimer out there that this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute any medical, nutritional, legal, or other professional advice. The content that you'll be listening to is not intended to replace professional advice, and it is recommended that you seek advice from a qualified professional if you do have any concerns while you're listening. Um, the views and opinions that are going to be expressed here are those of the hosts, any guests that come in the future, and do not reflect those of any employer, organization, or sponsor.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christina. So, we're going to go ahead and start by meeting the collective. And we will go around just introducing ourselves. So we'll kick a off with Nicolette. Go ahead and get us started.
Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here with our group. As you hear, I'm Nicolette. I use she, her pronouns. I am a pediatric nurse practitioner. A little background here. With my career and role, I used to work as a nurse for eons. I chose this field due to personal reasons, having my own lived experience struggling with an eating disorder. And also wanting to work and do the work because it's a tough kind of work to do, but to work and support folks in the Latine community, because I think that part is missing. And I think that's why we're all here, is to represent and really share some deeper insight that might be missing out there in the community. So I chose that for that reason. My family in and of itself, they're from Ecuador, and I grew up with a lot of healers. I have a doctor, like a family doctor in a small town there. My cousin's a doctor, etc. While there is a big history of healers in my family in Ecuador, we've also struggled a lot with eating disorders of various types. So whether it is in another country, also in the US. So I think that's another deeper part of why I bring this out, is to really share experiences that I know folks have been struggling with, no matter where they're from or where they live, but especially with the Latino community. So I know treatment can be overwhelming and very confusing with the medical conversations that's thrown out there. So that's why I'm out here, is just to keep things simple, direct, and informative. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I think with my own relationship with myself and food, it's been an evolving process. I think there's still so much I'm learning as well, but I think it's just right to be there for folks, and that's why I'm excited to provide a lot of education in certain areas. I think we'll chat a little bit later about what some topics are, but I think I'll leave it at that and about me. But yeah, hop it over to whoever's next.
I can jump in. My name is Cristina, and I am a dietitian. I'm currently in Chicago. As of this year, I grew up in Southern California and have kind of bounced around throughout my years to different places. And I kind of just landed in the field of nutrition and dietetics as a bit of a finding myself. I think like a lot of people, I started off with like a dream of being a doctor, wanted to help people, give back to the world, and I quickly learned, I think I'm a little too emotional for this. I'm not gonna survive. And I like joke that I kind of played myself because this work is heavy and it is also very emotional, but in a very different capacity. And so I think being in this field has allowed me to combine my passions for science and for food and community building in a really nice way. And so I think that also kind of helped me highlight, like my own cultural upbringing, how food has always played such a dynamic role in Latina households, where it's not just nourishment, it's really celebrating, comforting yourself, and expressing love. It's, I think, even like at a greater magnitude when you zoom out, food can be as simple as like showing somebody that you care, and as complex as like entering into the world of politics. And a lot of that can really leave people not knowing what direction to turn into. And so that, I think, is kind of where I felt called to step in to really use some of the privileges I have to help people understand, you know, like how it is that we can use food to our advantage without having to compromise everything that we grew up learning from our cultures, and also learning how to challenge what the dominant narratives end up being, and how our foods are constantly demonized and diet culture really takes over. So yeah, that's a little bit about how I ended up here. I really like it. I don't know that I see myself doing anything else, and hopefully we can just, you know, keep the fight going.
Mhm.
Nice. I can jump in next. I'm Stacey Ray. Pronouns are she and her. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist based in Los Angeles, but travel around quite a bit. I've been working in the eating disorder field for like 10 plus years, which is kind of nuts at this point. I've worked in I've worked in all levels of treatment. So I've worked in residential, inpatient, PHP, IOP, and now private practice, where I am predominantly. I think when I think of like what led me to my current role, I think considering how long I've been in it, it's more important like what kept me in it. And so what's kept me in it is really, I don't think when I first entered the eating disorder realm, I really understood how much relationships are involved in really eating disorder, like people healing from their eating disorders. And like ironically how food and how I grew up played a role in me wanting to like share that with others. So I'm Mexican and grew up in that type of culture where it was very much like food centric, and like feeding people is an act of love, and even just feeding people the food that they like is an act of love, right? Because I even think of like my ARFID kiddos, it's like, no, if I can really understand what they like, they, you know, I think that's how I show them love through food. But yeah, I think really how important food to me in my own life, and how relationships are to me in my own life really kept me interested in eating disorders past just like why someone's restricting or why someone's binging or purging, because I hadn't had a lived experience with it. So like having to bring my own self into that realm, I think that's really what's kept me so interested and focused. And I loved being in the kitchen when I worked in eating disorder treatment. I loved having clients with me in the kitchen. And even if they weren't eating but participating, like I think that was really special to me, to have people feel safe around food, even if that's like through me. Like they felt safe with me, so therefore I'm like the middleman in between food. And so I think very much so like how I grew up getting loved through food, through like specifically I think a lot of my grandma, like how she showed me that is how I want other people to feel. And so I think that's like a lot of my really has shaped the way how I work, because I work very relationally with clients, and really focus on like who is in their circle, who is in their system, who do they reach out for support, like what is actually going on, not just like why are you restricting and how do we get your calories up. So I know that's the dietitian's work a lot, but I feel for y'all. But yeah, I think that's I think that I answered all the things. But yeah, and I'm excited. Obviously, like being, or the other part I'll add to this is like being the only Latina therapist. I think I was the only Latina therapist at the place I worked at for the first 10 years. And so I think that's probably important to note. Has really what's made me, I think, step more into like my Latinidad, is like wanting to be like, oh, I'm the only one. Got it. Like I am going to represent, or I'm.
Oh no.
We have seemed to lost Stacy, and
Just trying to crawl back.
let's see. Okay.
Give her time to
Well,
return.
we'll give Stacy time to get back to us, but you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll introduce myself. My name is Veronica Shindo. I go by she, her pronouns. Yeah, I grew up in a Mexican American household, pretty traditional with the way that oh, let me go ahead and pause and here we go.
Sorry, I put my
Stacy,
phone
no,
on do
no,
not
you're
disturb,
okay.
but my mom knows if she calls more than once, it will go through.
No worries.
Speaking of family.
Speaking of
Yes.
family, sorry about that. I don't know if we can edit it, but anyways, I'll just finish what I was saying. Is basically realizing I was the only one and noticing not just like, clients who identified as Latine were coming to me, but like just BIPOC in general and like the role I played in that. And then stepping further into that of really wanting to do this work because it's not just, yes, it's obviously for the Latina community, but it really is for people who are missed or not seen or not understood by the general. I think the eating disorder world has been predominantly white for a very long time. And if we're not straying from that path, we're really not taking care of everybody. And so for something like this collective is like we're like collectively working at making sure those people are seen and cared for in a way that feels best for them, not a way that feels best for the white folk. So yeah, I'll end with that.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. It's really great to just kind of hear everyone's story, right? I'm a big believer in that there's power in storytelling, and each of us have our own story, and that's part of the healing journey for us, right? Just kind of taking it back. My name is Veronica Shindo, therapist, an associate therapist, soon to be licensed by next year, hopefully. But I go by she, her pronouns. I've been in the field of eating disorders. I would say probably I'm rather green. I'm going in for about like 2.5 to 3 years now. However, I've been so grateful for this opportunity to be here. I think I could resonate with a lot of, everyone's kind of stories and backgrounds, right? Of the fact that BIPOC folk and even, Latina in particular have been pushed off to the margins rather than being at the forefront when it comes to healthcare, specifically in specialized healthcare and eating disorders. That's something that is just, it's there. It's does not discriminate against anybody. Some of my own cultural experiences I think that have shaped the work that I do is I really lean on family, the connections, right? Even just the experiences that food brings to every culture. For myself, a lot of my memories are around food, both positive and negative. So that's something that I always like to explore and bring to the table with my patients is just how how does your family look like? What does those relationships look like? How does that impact how you feel and the way that we go about doing things? Because it's something that Stacy would said, right? It's more than just like you're restricting. Why are you restricting? Let's up your calories. There's so much more deeper work into this than what we see. But definitely want to go ahead and lead the way with what really made us all come together as a collective, right? The mission and the values. So when we think of our mission and our values, our core values, that I know we worked really hard on to create those, and I'll kind of open it up. Like, how do we feel those really align with the work that we're trying to do here, right? I'll kind of open it up to that.
Yeah, I don't mind jumping into that one, going first, especially when we talk about like accessibility and inclusion. So even like before this collective of like, I know we have like people who are Spanish speakers. I'm trying to get there, and I think a big part of that is motivated by being able to provide services to more people, because not just in like the trying to think how to say this, like the Latina community isn't necessarily warm and welcome to the idea of a therapist or psychology, right? Which already leads to a barrier when someone wants to come into treatment. So if we have people who are even breaking through that barrier to finally say, okay, I need something, I need help, then to allow a stranger to be involved in their family life, right? Which is a whole another layer of another barrier of like, well, now I'm going to tell everyone secrets, so I can't do that. You get them through that barrier, and then they finally are like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then their person doesn't understand what they're saying because they might be speaking in Spanglish or just Spanish or whatever. It felt like wanting to make sure those people are also taken care of and seen. And I think in this space, when there's already just so few Latina therapists, I would say, because we're all Latina, identified Latina therapists in general is like, there's only like 6% of Latinos have their masters, and that's masters across the board. That's not even therapists. So then we go to therapists, and then we go to like eating disorder therapists, which is like this. And I'm assuming that's across all avenues. That's across dietetics. That's across medical professionals. Yeah. And so really making sure if we just happen to all know each other, and it's like, okay, how can we, with all of this knowledge, set a collective up, which doesn't really exist, to be able to provide our services, which we're lucky enough to all have different, I think, levels of English and Spanish, to be able to come together and really provide these much needed resources to the community. And I think that's based in like our, even just like how we have all kind of gotten to know each other for the most part. It was like, we were all like, oh wait, you're Latina también? Like, oh, we can speak Spanish too. Oh, I can kind of talk. Like I was kind of still learning when I met Christina and Nico, but it was like, I was like able to like connect to them through that. So if we're able to do that to each other, we're able to now do that to the community. So I feel like it's just an extension of like what brought us to each other, which is language and culture. So I'm really excited for that one, of like really having the knowledge of the culture, which then increases the access, and then those people are going to feel included.
Yeah. I'll tie to that if it's okay to go. Yeah. Interesting. You talked about the therapy piece. Like that's really lacking. It's lacking everywhere, like you said, with folks who identify as Latino, Latina, and then also may or may not speak any level of Spanish or the language. I find that like for folks, there is a little bit more comfort level to seek medical help and guidance. And I don't know if that's just this historical thing of trusting in that medical provider. Let's listen to what they say. So I think what I'm excited to be standing in here to represent is to help tweak that and break through, because I think we'll learn a little bit what could be deeply rooted in areas that are a little bit more paternalistic or sometimes condescending or colonized, is going to be helpful to empower folks to understand maybe where some of these myth-busting health facts are false and maybe where they're maybe true to an extent. One thing I can think of, we'll dive into that at another video, is like talking about the BMI, for example. Like, where did that come from? Who are the folks that came from? The primary population, like mostly cis white males. But we use that a lot in a medical visit when we're talking about health and where someone's status is. So I think in that piece, there's trust in it, and it's good to understand where folks stand with with what their true health needs are, and to be a little bit more open and feeling accepted. Because I think a lot of harm has been done, and well, whether it's not intended or not, it is good for that understanding. So I think that's going to be important too, because there is trust in the medical community. It's good to understand what parts are true and valid for our diverse populations that we have. So I think that's part of our mission, I know, is just to kind of myth bust, decolonize some of this wellness ideals that we have been growing up on, and kind of have a new vision. So, yeah.
And I feel like we need a new term for like an almond mom, pero en español. Like, I know it's not almendras, like it's something else. Like there's another fruit I'm thinking of, or a vegetable that they're like, eat this, it helps you lose weight. Stuff like that, like having, like talking about all of those things of like how it's specifically ours in that way. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, no, I will piggyback off of both of you, or like even just like extending from our mission into our core values, like the community part really speaks a lot to me in like really centering everybody. I know it starts with the four of us, but like we are so here to just listen to our community and really provide a stage for everybody so that we can uplift those voices. And I know like even just like in my field as a dietitian, we're so like traditionally trained to be very like in the center of it, like you are the, I don't know, the nucleus of the atom, and everything else kind of revolves around you. So you have to be able to, I guess like a better analogy would be like somebody conducting an orchestra, right? Like you have to move every piece, and it's, a lot of us are very type A, and I hate it. But it's like you don't have the final word, right? You have to be able to open up and lean on your community, whether that's colleagues in the same field, colleagues in another field, and really be able to challenge all of the traditional protocols and interventions that we've been taught. Because even something as simple as like diabetes management, for me, that was like one of my turning points of like, okay, if I'm not going to be a doctor, a dietitian can help. But those are always so weight centric. Interventions that are created and really cause so much damage to somebody's relationship with food that it creates all this fear to say, well, I grew up eating tortillas and rice and all that, and all of a sudden I can no longer have those anymore. Like, how do I even help my body keep me going? So yeah, I'm really like really excited for us to be able to have that community amongst each other so that we can hear those different views and foster the spaces to connect and be able to co-create these spaces so that every voice is heard.
Mhm. I think a common theme that I'm picking up, and I know we were really intentional with creating our mission statement and our core values, but just the importance of community as well as reclaiming, right? This is a space of reclaiming our autonomy over our health, right? Reclaiming that through a cultural lens that feels good for ourselves. That doesn't make us feel like we have to strip away, right, all of the traditions or the rootedness that our culture has in us. So I really love just kind of hearing that from everyone. And I think one of the next questions we have here is, in all of our different capacities in this field, like what are some of the gaps that we've noticed, right, in doing the work that we are doing, and what are some things that we hope to be able to address through this?
Yeah, I think the biggest first thing I think of with this is that there tends to be misalignment in what everyone figures to be the ideal way of recovering, the ideal way to reach that moment of being at peace and health of ourselves in a physical, mental, spiritual way. There are areas that aren't discussed in that, and there's areas that's based on very old ways of thinking, especially medically and physically health speaking. Um, and so I think that's a big area that is worth unraveling, opening up, sifting through, and seeing like, okay, this does not really resonate with our culture, with our values, with our different types of bodies. This maybe does. So it's good to go through that. I think that's a big area, is just reorganizing what's out there and what general treatment programs still follow. I think flexibility to really finding alignment is necessary. I know there's areas too, speaking from medical field areas, is just difficulty understanding jargon and what are the physical components that come up when we're feeling undernourished and when we're trying to get better. It's just understanding what goes on in our bodies. And so a big piece I know I'm excited to chat about is just to, again, reframe it and explain it in a way that makes sense for people. Yeah, I think that's one of the few things I'm thinking of there.
Yeah. I think I'll also add that like even before they get to like how do I get into treatment or what type of treatment is going to be best for me, like accepting that we've gotten to that part that treatment is maybe needed, that the help has to come. And I think in Latina cultures, like mental health in general is very taboo. Those conversations are very stigmatized. And so like I think family systems often think that, it's best not to talk about it. We'll solve it within ourselves. We can only rely on ourselves. And I think a lot of that is like the mistrust. Like, how is this other person going to know any better than us? Or like what happens with what we change, or like they don't understand where we're coming from. And so those types of misconceptions, like I feel like they kind of erase like the unique ways that colonization and racism and assimilation shape our relationships. And so I think being able to also highlight those things for everybody and let them know it's okay if that's what we were told. Like, but here's the other side of the coin can help us start to unlearn some of those things that kept us stuck.
Yeah, I'll definitely add to that, because I was going to say like prevention, I think, is really what's missing from the not just eating disorder field, but I even think like why, to kind of like even just remind us like why we didn't name it an eating disorder collective is because we're really just trying to help people who are trying to get out of diet culture or understand it a little bit more. And to Christina's point of like, how are we decolonizing the language that we've learned to use for our bodies or for our foods, especially how people talk about like Latine foods in general, right? Of like that it's unhealthy, or I'm going to save it for my cheat day, or that it's greasy, or that it's oily, or X, Y, and Z. And like, you know, all of the messages and that, but really reminding like the prevention of like, well, why is that your relationship with food? Like, because if we're talking about people who, or a community who really like hesitant to get into psychology, or even just go to the doctor sometimes, right? Or go to the doctor for maybe wait too long. It's like, okay, how do we start educating and like planting the seed now in order so it doesn't turn into an eating disorder later? So how can we create space for people to just be like, I think I have a weird relationship with food. I think I have a weird relationship with my body. I don't like how I look, but is that because am I unhealthy, or what is it? Because I've been told I'm unhealthy my whole life because I'm X weight or do this in this way, but is that actually true, right? And so just I think there's the gap in the field is like it is only like when you're going to treatment, right? Like, okay, well now you have an eating disorder, you're diagnosed, and now we're going to get care, but it's like how long it takes for sometimes people to even get there, or never even really be diagnosable, but have so many symptoms. And it's like, I think the gap that we get to fill is like education about, no, that might not be normal. No, just because your parents have done that, or your mom did that, or your dad did that, doesn't necessarily mean it's normal. Just because they say you can't have rice and tortillas because you are diabetic, that's not necessarily true, right? How do we actually give you a fuller picture of like how to still be connected to your culture and connected to your food while also still challenging these myths or diet culture beliefs that have really gotten in the way of you feeling like you're living your full life, or I don't know, just feeling like you can expand in a lot of different ways.
Authentically live your life kind of thing. Yeah.
And I think of familismo, right? Like when I hear all of everything, right? Wanting to kind of keep everything like within the family, like, oh no, like we can't, let it be known that there's something going on with you because like so and so, le va a decir a esta tía or whatever. Like it's like we really have to shift that lens and make the conversation, like make it okay to have these vulnerable conversations within our community, right? I I just think of like, can we imagine just if we were to have like full lens focused on this community, just how much data we would gather and how much more gaps we would see when it comes to that preventative care that's not there, that's not being utilized, right? Because of experiences in the care system, and mental health care is healthcare. That is something like so important that needs to be highlighted, right? And I think I kind of want to shift over to like, who are we creating this podcast for? Right? Like, who are we creating this podcast for, and what kind of topics are we expecting to see covered? I'll leave it open.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of illustrated it a little bit, so I'll jump back in. But yeah, like creating it not just for people who have eating disorders, for sure not, right? Like there's even though the data is catching up to what the population actually looks like in terms of those diagnosed with the eating disorder, there's still so many people who aren't diagnosed with an eating disorder or don't even really meet criteria for necessarily a full-fledged eating disorder, but they have body struggles, they have food struggles, their weight might not be in a certain category, but they have fluctuated their whole lives, or that they've restricted their whole lives, or are just having a weird relationship. Like I said, just like a relationship with food that they don't feel is satisfactory to them, or maybe getting in the way of them really being able to, I don't know, not worry about it. Like being able to just wake up in the morning and open the fridge and be like, that sounds good. And like, how do we get there for most people, I think. And so really wanting to make sure this is not just for people who feel like they have an eating disorder. It's just for people who are like interested in like sin dieta as like getting out of diet culture. Like, what would my life look like if I wasn't constantly dieting or thinking about dieting or wanting to lose weight? And like, those are the people I think we're really trying to bring in to then preventatively, maybe guide them away from that where we know that train would go.
It can spiral.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think any scenario, right? So it could be folks who live on their own, but they see their families just for holidays, and that in itself is a big trigger or difficult moment. Or folks who are always with their family and they're even feeding them and managing meals. Folks who have other little folks who rely on them, or the other way around. So I think the dynamic too, while it can be different, there's going to be some similar themes that will come up too as we go through that and discuss. But I know we're always happy to hear feedback if there's areas that are missed too, that we haven't thought of or brought forth to what we're speaking to right now.
Yeah. And it's for all of those that need help figuring out how to talk to their families about all of this, right? Like we keep repeating family, and sometimes that Thea that we're scared of finding out what's going on, she probably needs to hear it the most, because we're getting these ideas and we're being fed these beliefs from somewhere. And if we start to kind of like be that kink in the chain that finally breaks it, we can let them know, like, I'm kind of setting an example for you. And it's not so much because it has to be your burden, but it's because it kind of helps you kind of start to feel like you're liberating yourself from that.
Yeah. I love that. So, what do we hope are going to be some of the takeaways, right? I'm hearing a lot of like liberation, empowerment. Is there anything else in specific that we hope that our listeners are able to take away, right, from the different topics and seasons that we're going to go through?
Yeah. I know we spoke to some of these themes already, but I know some of the hope we had talked about is the empowerment. Like once you have information or able to process things, but to put it in this big picture, feeling empowered to make your decision on what feels right for yourself, on what health is, what kind of treatment support, conversations to have should be put there. Feeling just validated too. I know that's a big one, is maybe the general population, if whether you're treated or not, when you hear about eating disorders, it doesn't resonate with you. It is good to hear that there are stories where there are a lot more similarities to what you're going through. And just that in itself can be really empowering in and of itself as well. And I think empowerment, again, I'm always coming from the medical lens, but empowerment of our own body autonomy, understanding what is right for our bodies, what feels right, whether someone believes that is true or not. So yeah, I think those are some big pieces.
Yeah. I think even with validity, it's just letting people feel seen and heard and represented, because there might be others that are like, I'm not going to this place because they don't know my life. And I know, like, even for dietetics, if you told me I was going to be a dietitian, I would have laughed and been like, yeah, right. I hate those people. They just put people on diets. And to then see and kind of like show people that, like, hey, some of us exist that are not going to talk about that. It's okay. It invites people to kind of challenge that fear and say, oh, somebody's actually going to listen to me and work with me so that we can kind of create a plan together. And if that inspires people to go out there, reach out to those professionals, and I think that's something super powerful to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. I think I just want to add in there, in doing the work that we've been doing, and even in my own experiences with some of my own patients, it's like the fact that they're so amazed at the fact that we're not pushing like diet on them or restriction on them. And I think that right there just really shows how our, how the westernized lens of things are impacting, and it's trickling down, right? Or it's down to the point where our bodies are so different. Every body is different, right? Depending on ethnicity, right? Sex, age, all these things. And all these factors are factors that are not taken into consideration when we are looking for healing of any kind. And I think if there's a key takeaway I would hope that our listeners get is that their voice matters. And if there's ever a provider, right, of any capacity, mental health, right, dietitian, medical, psychiatric, therapist, that doesn't align with what they are looking for, they have the choice to seek someone that does want to foster what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll jump in too. Like, I think what I would want them to take away with is like, even just like looking at all of us, it's like white people have had the privilege of having an all white team their whole lives, right? And we've not had that privilege. I feel like I can speak for every of us. We've not had to ever, whether it's just like the regular doctor or not, never had all Latine team, Latina team, whatever your preference is. And they can look at us and be like, oh shit, they're all in the room together. And how does this feel for me to be in a room with everybody who looks like me or feels like me or could relate to me in this capacity, and knowing like that's possible for them. Because I think even for me, even just like doing my own therapy, it was like I had white therapists all growing up. And then the first time I had a Latina therapist, I was like, oh shit, this is different, right? And I know that as a Latina therapist, but to like experience it and then start to like realize like, oh, my whole team could look like this. I didn't even think that was possible because I never really saw them. And now that I think just in general, you know, there's more of us now getting into higher degrees and stuff like that, like really showing to the clients of like, this could be how you feel in your actual therapy session or your actual dietitian session or your actual medical session. Like you can actually ask for somebody who looks like you or feels like you or comes from the same background that you do. And so hopefully this is like an extension of like, oh, look how good this feels to just like be seen and be heard and be validated by all of these different, not genres, but professions. And how do I get that in my own personal life is the takeaway.
Yeah. I think just to kind of conclude on that, it's almost like, oh, like I don't have to explain, right? Certain like aspects of my culture, certain things that happen, right? Like it's almost like I think like those memes. It's like, you know, if your partner or someone doesn't speak Spanish, it's like, how do I explain to them, you know? Where it's like, me tengo un golpe de aire. How do I explain to them that the air hit me, right? So that's kind of where I go to that, like where my mind goes with that. But you know,
or like I love when Christina will be like, I can't say this in English. I need to yell in Spanish.
Yeah,
it feels different.
It does. It does. It just hits different. But I think what, you know, just to kind of wrap up, it's I'll kind of throw it at Christina. Like, how could listeners, right, engage with us, right, ask questions, share experiences, any suggestions or topics? Because I know we really, all of us, really want to make a point of this is a space for everybody, right? And we want to speak on topics or, you know, have those hard conversations that you all also want to hear.
Yeah. So by the time this airs, y'all, you will have access to our website where you can find forms that are linked where we want to hear from you, right? Like you can submit ideas for topics. You can, you know, send us comments or emails and let us know this is what I thought of this episode that you spoke about, or this was what was missing, or what can we improve about this, or like, this is what I would like to see. Are there certain professionals that you feel like are also missing that we're not capturing, so that we can bring those voices to you and you can hear a little bit about, you know, like what their experiences are. But all of that, the ways you can engage with us are going to be on that website. We'll make sure that those links are accessible to everybody. Everything will be in Spanish and in English. So we are like, you know, kind of our mission. We really want to make sure that language is never a barrier here and that everybody is able to access all of that.
And I think from all of us here, right? Muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotras. And this was our first introduction to Sin Dieta.
Yay!